Hi everyone. So I'm Alia and we have Ilani here again today for another episode of our Mama Matters series on our Aligning Authenticity podcast. This time we have a little bit of a sign where we talk about all things mental health. So what's been going on with you, Ilani? You went on a holiday?
Yes, I went to a beach dekat PD hari tu and we saw crocodile. It was so random. I did not expect that. Like, I didn't even know crocodiles could swim in the ocean.
Yeah, because I was watching your IG stories and you're saying how you guys are like you, your husband, and your son was nicely swimming away, and suddenly you see this one woman signaling to you. Is it about the crocodile?
We were just like chilling at the beach, like we were in the water. And then suddenly this kakak came and she was like, Dek, ada buaya. And I was like, huh? I was very confused. I was like, what do you mean buaya? Because like usually you don't find that at the beach.
Yeah.
But then we quickly got out of the water and then like we saw it swimming. And then my husband was like, that's not a crocodile. That's a log. Like a random kayu just floating in the ocean. And I'm like, I don't think so, babe. We better get out of here. So like when we dah keluar, like got off from the beach, we went upstairs, like ada macam parking lot. And then the abang there was like, yeah, I caught it on camera. So we saw on his camera, on his video. But so memang you can see like the crocodile swimming happily, relaxing, swimming. And it was very close to the beach. So Alhamdulillah, we were safe. But apparently they were saying how like in PD there's like Sungai Linggi. There's a lot of saltwater crocodiles.
Okay.
So they might have like swam out to the ocean.
But it was so interesting. When I saw that story, and then coincidentally, even on TikTok, whatnot, there were videos of like just one random alligator that's just like swimming, taking its own sweet time. And I'm like, is this the same one yang Ilani saw? Or was it like a different one?
I think probably, hopefully there was only one crocodile just swimming around.
And it's been like shunned by its group couple.
Yeah.
Back to this episode. Today, what we want to talk a bit more about is parenting styles, how it can actually be different. Especially when a couple, when you get married also, because each one, like whether it's the husband, the wife, you come in with this different background experiences or so. But to tie it all together, and this was something that we talked about, at least we were sharing on Instagram about how some of the letters that come in on letters to Alia, if it's related to mama topics also, then we will discuss it here.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about that letter that we've received, right? So it comes from Maya. Thanks for writing to us, Maya. Maya, we're here to help. Yes, we're here to help.
You're not alone.
Yeah. So just some context and just to summarize the letter. So she's a working mom of 2 young kids. There's a 3-year-old and one who's 3 months. But she's also currently going through the whole teenager phase. And she feels that it is the toughest phase so far, which is also kind of interesting because we hear about terrible twos, but for her it's the teenager phase that's challenging. So she doesn't know what has went wrong or maybe what she's done wrong, but overall it just feels as if she has failed as a mom, and the mom guilt is strong. So especially in the times when she has raised her voice at the 3-year-old, because there's a bit of that mix of wanting to make sure that the 3-year-old grows up right, but also feeling to learn that she doesn't get away with anything, but you also feel bad that you're letting, as in scolding as often. Yeah. And then the other part, she kind of talks about how parenting can feel lonely sometimes because she does have a husband there, but at times she feels like maybe it's a bit she feels like he does not completely get her, and that she's worried that her kids would resent or hate her if she continues on in that direction. Because and also what to add on another cherry on top is where the husband also tends to be strict sometimes, so she feels like she also needs to be a good cop. Okay, so she doesn't know what to do. She knows it's part of parenting and still has a long way to go. She just hopes it's not a lonely journey.
Oh, yeah. laughs a lot.
We've both been there. Yes.
So relatable. Actually, that's something that I'm going through as well, to be honest. I mean, parts of it, yeah. Especially with like the teenager phase. Happening.
Okay. So, yeah, what's your take on that letter plus what you're going through?
Yeah, oh my gosh. I think first of all, just want to tell Maya that like you're not alone, okay? You're not going through this yourself. Like it's very common actually, and that's something that I'm going through as well. I have a 3.5-year-old son, and yeah, I would consider him a strong-willed child. So strong-willed children are very determined. The more you say no, the more they will do it. So
Yeah.
I feel like it requires a very specific strategy with them. But yeah, I just wanted to say like you're not alone lah. Macam, yeah. And of course it's hard, especially because you are a new mom of 2. Like your baby is still very young, 3 months old, and you're working.
Yeah.
That's like a lot of things, you know? Like there's like layers to this. And I can feel that it sounds like you're tired lah. And you feel like you're trying your best, but it's not enough. And then you feel guilty kan. So, but yeah.
From one aspect, I feel that for sure there's definitely a lot going through, and this is something that we address whenever we do these episodes, right? We talk a bit more about the emotions that pop up with it. So I think for her, exactly like what you said, I think that one is that maybe you are exhausted, Maya, and it's okay to feel that, because sometimes you feel overstimulated during the day because you're not only thinking about work. There's like the 3-year-old and then the 3-month old, and it can be very overwhelming, especially if you may not have as much help as at home.
Oh,
right?
yeah. And if her baby is 3 months old, then that means she's probably just getting back to work.
Yeah.
For most moms, their maternity leave is usually 3 months.
Yeah.
So you're probably going through a transition as well, like going to a new routine for the whole of your family.
Yeah. And that can actually be a very big mix up of emotions, like basically a lot of different types of emotions in play, right? There's the frustration, there could be a bit of the guilt, which kind of explains how you feel like you're doing things wrong, you feel like you fail as a mom or so.
Yeah.
So it is quite challenging, and with that I feel that it's also, and this is also one of the things that we have wanted to address in this episode, about how it can be when you have 2 quite different parenting styles in the same relationship, so I don't know if I said, but from what you shared, also you've had that experience, and so have I. Like in the past, like when my daughter was young, like I think I was a bit more of the chilled one.
Yeah.
I would say a bit more chill. Can't say I really knew what I was doing, but I was just more like, but even then, even though I was chill, I was still feeling very worried about getting it wrong. And I think at that time is where you have all these people giving you all kinds of parenting advice, how you should do this, do that, you should, especially when it's the older generation, they can also tell you like, you can't be too soft with your kids, Yeah, but, her father at that time was where he was very strict. So he would be very like structured about things. And it did cause quite a bit of sometimes clashes between the 2 of us, and it's different when your kid is so small, because they're not really going to tell you like so straight up, right? Like, see, like, hey, this is not working for me or not. They would either support it and go along with it, or like you say, resist because they're strong-willed, So for me with my daughter was where she was more as a strong-willed portion now.
Oh, really? Okay.
She was more strong-willed,
Yeah.
But how was it like for you also? I mean, now also, like when your son was younger, coming up to this point, right? Do you and your husband also have different parenting styles?
I would say yes. I mean, some things we agree on, but then execution-wise, like we do things a bit differently. So for me, I'm a bit more chill like you lah. I don't know. I think it takes a lot for me to be angry and to like raise my voice. So I don't find I find it a bit easier, I guess, to stay calm in most situations when I'm regulated myself lah. But my husband, his first reaction, like he easily gets triggered. So he will like raise his voice. And I feel like it's a different style from me. And then when we talked about it, it turns out that like when growing up, me and him, we were raised very differently. So macam my parents never really raised their voices, never hit me. But for him, you know, typical Asian parent style.
Military school style lah, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, when you say Asian parents, oh, okay, like, you know lah what I mean. So for him, like, how that translates to raising our son is that to him, it's like, that's him really trying his best to, you know, not be so Asian.
Okay.
But it still comes off like, oh, that's so different from my style. Like, I don't like, you know, raising voices or like yelling and definitely no hitting. Or ideally, I wouldn't like that, you know. So, yeah, I think when that clash happens, macam, you feel like, never really thought that this would happen. But it does happen. And
Yeah, like, this is different when you're dating and all,
yeah,
kan?
it's
And
not
then
really
when you're
not
married.
something. Yeah, it's not something we talk about. But also, I mean, there's an ideal way of you thinking how you would react in a certain situation, but then when it actually happens, macam it might be different from what you think, right?
Yeah.
So another example is that like there has been a couple of times where I have raised my voice and I got like really upset at my son. And then I was, you know, it wasn't something that I was used to doing. And it kind of surprised myself. Like, how come macam I raise my voice? Like, usually I'm not like this. So that's something that I'm going through as well. And Maya mentioned that in her letter, like she feels bad when she raises her voice at her doctor. So, yeah, that's something that I can relate to because maybe like it's not something
that you've been used to doing, Maya.
Yeah, maybe
Something
she's not
comes out
used.
nowhere.
Because she said like the teenager phase, guys. So maybe it's something new as well that she's experiencing. And I think the reason why we feel guilty is that because our behavior doesn't align with what we value. So you know, you feel like that discrepancy in how like we ideally want to behave, but we're not behaving that way.
Yeah, so there's two things going on with that, you know. One is how the expectation versus reality.
Yes.
Like, okay, in your mind, you imagine when your kid is like 2 years old or 3 years old, this is how it is, you know. And obviously, during those times, you imagine a very pretty picture, lah, you know, like being able to do certain things together. But the other part, which is also quite profound for what you shared, is our sense of like self-image or identity. You know, like what we've known ourselves as. So, for example, if you've always known yourself as someone who's calm or so, and then you're in a certain situation where both of you get much more heavily into it, right? Because you as a mom, you're like, okay, I want you to do something a certain way. And your kid is there like, no.
Yeah.
And then it just brings out a different side of you.
Yeah.
So
it's so surprising.
Yeah. So for you, when it came to that moment, like the first few moments that you've had with your son, right? What do you think were some of the emotions you felt in that at that time?
I think I felt angry.
Okay.
And also frustrated. And would helpless be one of the things? Because, so I'll tell you this. Both times when this happened, I was triggered because he bit me.
Oh.
So, and like, sakit tau. Mat lebam. And he
That
only...
big, you don't need to be scared of the buaya anymore. You dah kena gigit pun. Okay, sorry. We're back to being serious.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, he's just a toddler. I get it. Tapi macam, you know, when dia gigit, sakit lah kan. And like, I'm physically in pain. And both times it happened macam around people. So like, takkanlah I nak react, nak marah dia terus kan. Macam, oh, like I feel macam people are watching us and I can't like marah dia straight away. And so I kind of like bottle it up. And then I macam, later on macam I burst, you know. And I think growing up, like I never learned how to manage anger. So I don't know how to like deal with it in a healthy way. It wasn't until recently that I learned that, you know, you have to complete the stress cycle or something like that. It's like when you feel angry or upset, you need movement to kind of like complete that cycle to let that energy out. So things like crying or like exercising or even laughing, like just to get that energy out.
To decompress basically.
Is what usually helps. But yeah, I think those are the things you know, those are skills that you don't really learn until you become a parent and then you get so triggered by your children.
When you're talking about the hopelessness or that sense of like, okay, I can't do anything about it now, did you ever feel that feeling of loneliness? Or that you're alone in going through it?
Yeah, I think in a way, yes. Because, I don't know, I don't see my mom friends talking about kena gigit. But also, like, my husband tak pernah kena. Selalu yang kena gigit is me.
Wow.
And I'm like, why? Like, you know, I just...
He geram lah. Want to show you love or something and then he bit you. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Like, but even when he was younger, he had incidents where like he would bite. So macam, I thought it was more like a sensory thing. So that one time too, he bit because he got frustrated lah, like very angry kan. So dia tak tahu macam mana nak manage his anger himself. And then there are other times where dia gigit because he just wanted to play. Like it was a kind of a playful bite. And that one I tak adalah get triggered. But you know, when he's like crying and screaming and yelling, and then dia pergi bite, oh my god, like so.
So I guess at that for that, right, in that situation, let's say when they are our kids are also kind of like a bit more out of control. I think we get a bit scared in that moment because we don't know how to handle it, right? We've never had a case of that screaming teenager or so, and then so you have two people there that are kind of like unhinged in that moment.
That's one way to put it.
Especially if it's the first few experiences you're going through it, you know. So like, which when they are 3 they're still always going through this different stages of development. It's only when they're a bit older where it's a bit more balanced out, you know, like as in like, for example, before they hit puberty or so. But when they're much younger, they're going through so many different stages, right? Like they grow up the fastest, like from baby to toddler, the rate of growth. And then, so with it comes all these other things, you know, like mentally, emotionally, physically. So, but anyway, why I mentioned it is also because I remember there were some times for my daughter also when she was 3, it's like she would just suddenly like freak out, like her have this tantrum out of nowhere, scream and like throw something, and I'm looking at her like confused, you know, like I'm like, you've had this situation yesterday, you did not react to it this way, kan? But this time she's like,
oh my god, have you seen those videos where like the toddler marah because the parent peeled the bananas the wrong way, or like they didn't get to peel the banana themselves? It's like those little things that they get upset about. Like this morning, my son got upset because I tak bagi dia pack all of his kotak susu. There were like 3 and he wanted to bring all of them to school. And I macam, Adam, you don't need all of this. And if you like drink all of this, you're going to have like sakit perut, you know? So they get triggered by, I don't know lah. But talking about like tantrums, right? So can I just share? So I learned about this framework called HALTS.
Okay.
This parenting coach. And it stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and sick. So I find that helpful, especially in the past year. Like I noticed after like 2 years old, like having that kind of framework really helps with my son. So like whenever he has tantrums, like I try to go through that checklist lah. Like offer him snacks and food and water, and then like especially if he's like sick, then I know that of course he's gonna be extra irritated. Like it's just
grown people also can be extra cranky slash irritated, right?
Exactly. So I feel like just having that kind of checklist at the back of my mind helps. Whenever he has tantrums, so I know macam what to like how to help him lah. Basically.
Yeah. I find that in my own experience with her, like, so in that moment when she was really like freaking out or whatnot, right? And I had no clue. I had no clue what was going on, right? Because as far as I knew, it's like she wasn't hungry, whatnot. But she just like freaked out, in that moment.
Yeah.
So, and before I would deal with it in a very like, hey, why is it like this lah? You should just behave or whatnot. But this time around, when I saw just the gravity of her tantrum at that point, I actually took a step back, right? And I said like, are you okay? Like, what are you feeling? Which might feel a bit weird because you feel like, oh, they're so young, how would they know what they're feeling, right? But they know. They sometimes know. Like, they tell you, okay, I'm angry or sad or whatnot. And I'm like, all right, okay, so let's talk about it, I say. And then I would slowly slide in because yesterday we had this. But today, the way you react, what you're doing is a bit different. And I find that when we're asking those kind of questions to them, it helps encourage them to think about it for themselves. So when they're thinking about it for themselves or they're reflecting, it helps us as moms, because it's like maybe before it's like 100% your problem because, you're taking it on, right? You feel it's your responsibility to fix whatever is going on with them. But when they are able to figure it out a little bit more or they give you a bit more information, maybe that 100%, it becomes more of like 60% or 70% because they already give you that guidance. Okay, mama, like, I need this now, So, and overall, it can actually reduce the cognitive load that we feel because instead of having to go through every single step of it, they've already told us. And I think it's also good practice for them because then in the future, when they're in such situations, they are quicker. Yes, yeah. It actually helps their emotional intelligence too, I feel.
I think that's such a good way to like deal with it. And I think that works well with older toddlers, but I think I'm gonna try that with Adam juga. Macam right now, I do help him name his feelings. So I'll just ask him like, are you upset? Are you angry? Are you sad because XYZ? And usually when I validate his feelings, there's a shift in his behavior. He calms down a little bit more.
But so we don't have to use such big words. It's like, are you happy, sad? So, and then what happened? Sometimes I find that question also is a bit more helpful than why. It's like, say, what happened? Okay, is okay. Now, did that make you sad? Did that make you upset? Then they put it together lah. So we don't need to go into the whole philosophy. Like where, what happened, why or whatnot. Yeah. So that's one that really helped. But I find that it can also be a bit challenging to have these kind of conversations, especially when you are around other parents who have the different styles. Like, so coming back to it, like if you have a partner, and it can be either one, right? Whether it's the husband or the wife, whatever. But they have very different schools of thoughts and they're coming in. So like what you shared just now about how for you, you're more chill, right? Maybe you're more ready to have these conversations. But for some of the parents, and no disrespect to them also, but because they've never experienced it, it can be challenging for them to understand why we're doing it in a different way, what more apply it, right? So I guess in your case, and I think this is a very real thing that a lot of women go through, it's like what has helped you kind of like navigate that, the different parenting styles that you've had compared to your husband, in raising your son now.
Yeah, I mean, navigating that, I think just having a conversation about it helps too. And if we had not kind of sat down and asked each other, like, why did you react that way? I wouldn't understand it from his perspective and he wouldn't understand it from my perspective. So he's aware that like, I would prefer it if we, kind of be a united front so that it's not confusing for our son. But because of our different parenting styles, it's, it's a bit like I have accepted that it's okay. Maybe it's a good thing that there's a difference in the style. And yeah, I feel like it's a bit hard, tapi macam it's okay kot.
Can definitely coexist at the same time, right?
Yeah,
Like one is, memang lah, we're not expecting like one side to completely change to another person's style, right? Because it's the same even with our personalities. We can't completely change ourselves to suit someone else, you know?
Because and macam kira macam my husband knows, and I also know about like why he reacts that way. And I think we're both trying to understand from each other's perspective, and at the same time we're trying to work on how we react and how we manage our own emotions and regulate ourselves. So yeah, I think just having that awareness already helps. But I think it's okay if both parents have different styles.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think in some cases it works out definitely well, like in your sense, is because, but what has helped in your situation is where you and him are able to have these conversations, Yet the case of how it can be for a lot of couples out there is where maybe either side, they're not ready to have that conversation. They may not even be willing to have that conversation, especially if maybe some of them are a bit more traditional in that sense, like the father is the strict one and the mother just kind of follows suit.
Actually, I wanted to share something. Before this, my husband thought he was going to be the fun parent.
Oh.
And then he realized that, like, I'm not going to be the one disciplining. So he has to be the one doing it.
So he had his own expectations versus reality moment.
Because, like, in our I have a lot of nephews and nieces, so he has always been the fun uncle. But when it comes to our own son,
he's no longer the fun one.
We all fun, Someone has to...
Yeah. Not always easy for everyone to have this kind of conversations, and that's where I would think that in some cases it can feel lonely. It can feel like, oh, I'm the only one that's kind of going through this. Like, yes, I have my partner here, but does this partner really understand or give that support? It's not a full yes. Or what do you think will help Mayala in this case, like with that loneliness, let's say?
I'm just thinking, in the instances where if her daughter has, those teenager tantrums, I feel like it's more manageable when, if both, like, Maya and her husband are there. So, like, she doesn't have to be the one to kind of, like, discipline her daughter, and since he is the one who's a bit more strict, right? So I feel like in situations like that, it might be more manageable. But if it's just her and her daughter, obviously she has to be the one, and it doesn't feel comfortable for her.
Yeah,
but
it's a very good point that you bring up, like as in about how it's still important in general, I would say, for parents to kind of still have a united front, in terms of, like, let's say what you want your kid to be when they're older, like what kind of values, whatnot. The approach you might have could be different. Like we have different styles. But the end goal of where we're going to, hopefully it's on the same page, right?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
then it definitely means like less resistance from both sides. But I would think that for, like let's say for Maya's situation, like that sense of loneliness, so, and it's true. It'll be great if there is that part where, you can have that conversation with your husband and you both are looking united at that point. But for some of these women, maybe that's not possible yet. So how do we actually take a step in that direction? One is like, okay lah, maybe for some also is where I think that for some women also, we worry about having that conversation because we think that it's just my role as the mom to handle it. They don't think that they can actually reach out for that support from their husbands. That's one way that sometimes comes up lah. But now women are also getting more modern, that they might also speak up a bit more.
Yeah.
Another one that you mentioned the last time around, which is very true, is to have that social support, like other women that are actually kind of going through a similar thing, to ask them for tips or even just to talk about it so that you feel less alone.
Yeah. Actually, that's like a really good idea. Because when I did confide in my mom friends and I told them like, oh, I yelled at my son for the first time ever. And then they were like, and then you felt better, right? Oh, okay.
You validated.
Yeah, they validated me because I was like worried, macam, oh, am I a bad mom? And they were like, no, it's okay. We're Asian moms.
Or like sometimes you kind of still have to be very straightforward, right?
Yeah.
We want to raise them right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I instantly felt better after that. I was like, okay.
So it's not that bad.
I don't think, I'm not that bad. Oh, but also, so those two things I think are good ideas to help her with feeling less alone. Sometimes you just need someone to tell you that, like, like you're doing great and like you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, I definitely on one of the upsides, right? The fact, Maya, I mean, if you're not aware already, the fact that you're actually already even having these feelings, these worries about whether you're feeling as a mom, that's a sign in itself that you care. Right?
Yeah.
Normally, the ones who are really hantus, they don't ask themselves this question. They don't feel this guilt,
Yeah.
So I suppose that's one way to look at it, that you do care enough about the situation. And sometimes when you're super tired, we are also harder on ourselves.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's hard to like avoid situations where you feel triggered and overwhelmed, overstimulated, and then you end up like yelling at your daughter. And mistakes happen. We're all human. But I feel like what's more important is the repair that you do after things like that happen.
Yeah.
Okay? So, after I dah marah my son and then he yelled at me, then we both say sorry. So I'm like, like I apologize to him, and usually he will apologize to me first lah. He say, I'm sorry, mommy. And I'll be like, I'm sorry too, Adam. Like, I understand that you were upset because I didn't let you, watch YouTube on the phone, or I didn't let you do XYZ. And he's like, I was sad, but it's okay. And then I asked him, like, do you forgive me? He's like, yeah. And then, okay.
So sweet. That's so kumbaya. I think a very different approach, this time.
I mean, that's the only way I can feel less guilty lah about, raising my voice at him. But I feel better after I apologize. And then, like, we just hug it out. And, kids, they move on very fast. I feel like one of the things that Maya is worried about is that she's worried that her kids will resent her and hate her.
Yeah, for sure.
But I feel like at this age, they are very quick to forgive and they'll just move on. And like they just want to play. They just want, like, they still love you. Because I always like tell my son, like, even though I'm angry and mad at you, I still love you. So it's okay.
Yeah. It's very, very profound because, what you mentioned just now about apologizing or so, like some parents might actually take it as like, oh, I'm being weak, for if I were to apologize, because I lay down the law, you just follow, and if you don't like it, well, too bad, you're under the roof of my house, right? But it is very interesting because when Alia, when she was around that age and she had some of her tantrums, and we really got into it, because she's like mini dragon and I'm also a big dragon, and we would go there. Khaleesi. But and after that, I would feel super bad, right? Like I would feel like, oh my gosh, I was like the worst mother in the world or whatnot. But I also remember that at that time I was so stressed but anyway, after the argument or whatnot, and she's upset, I'm upset, and we talk about it, so or she first says sorry. And so there are two things that happen at that point for me. One is like for her to understand, like, like using those questions I asked, it's like, why do you think I got upset? Where do you think that came from? And she's like, oh, I think it's this, all that. I said, okay, so imagine if you were Mama, like, how would you feel if something like that happened? Like, I've told you 5 times and you chose to ignore it.
Yeah.
Mama, I feel angry. I said, exactly. So, that's why I did that. I said, but having said that, also it's not right for me to scream, right, with it. Yeah, but at that point, I think it's very important for them to understand sometimes also why we do what we do. And the repair part that you mentioned, it is so, so important because, and it's funny, like when it was like a year or so later, it was always in the back of my mind, that all of these things have happened with me and her. Like, oh my God, I was like the worst mother. Here is all the evidence as to how I was like so terrible. And I told her, I said, Aria, like when you're younger, I'm very sorry lah for some of those things that had happened to you, like how I had reacted to you. And she's like, Mama, like, no, like you were perfect. Like you were great. And I was like, but the time that I saw that, and she was like, no, like you were great. Like you're fine as a mom, You're right that you're very forgiving. I just don't think that we should always we should take it for granted lah.
Yeah.
But it's sweet. It's really sweet that that's how they view you. It's like sometimes it's still their hero lah until like they're older. So you still have time. She's only 3 years old. Like 3 years old and 3 months old. When was the first time that you say that you and your husband, like you really saw the very big difference between your parenting styles? Like was there a certain situation at home or?
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't a specific incident, but I think it was when Adam grew from being a baby to being a toddler. Because I think after they hit 1 year old, it's like you can see a big shift in their behavior.
Yeah.
And then someone like Adam is very strong-willed, very, very strong-willed. And sometimes, like you said, like when we are tired or hungry, overstimulated, memang we will like definitely get triggered very, very easily. And so sometimes like I can see my husband at the end of the day, he's had like a very stressful day at the office and he comes home and he's so tired. And then like, Adam wants to play with him. Or like Adam will kacau him. Sometimes, like kids, right? They want your attention, but they don't know how to say it. So like they will do something as long as it gets your attention. And sometimes it's not a very nice thing to do.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But actually it's their way of saying, I want to play with you. I want your attention. Like, can you look at me? Can you like connect with me? And so in those situations, and I see my husband macam react like, why is he being so annoying? Like acting very harshly. But then actually, if we are regulated and ourselves, then it's easier for us to kind of not let our kids' actions affect us. Like we can turn it into a playful moment actually, but only if we are regulated ourselves. And I feel like that really is the hard work of being a parent.
For sure. I think that with the regulation, the first part that always happens, and even what we learn in emotional intelligence, is first the awareness. So before you can even go to self-management, self-regulation, it's about your self-awareness. So let's say in the case of like your husband, or how it can be actually for a lot of people, right? Because when you yourself were a kid, you never did that with your parents, right? Like, I feel like the things that my daughter does, right? I would not have gotten away with it. I was her age, and with my parents back then. So of course, when it's a new situation, it's a very it's something that's very, very different, and of course we can say like, yes, you should behave this way, that way, but in that moment, like you said, it's really about having that clear handle or awareness. So something that did help me that time was like, okay, Alia, you have to remember that you're not used to this yet. You did not have this experience yet. Okay, it's a different experience, but that also in itself, especially if you are raising your kids in a way that's different from how your parents has raised you, it can make it feel more unsettling.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't know. It's not like macam a cake you put into the oven, right? And then you can see in like 1 hour what is the results of that. This is like years.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I think that is something which can be unnerving, and that can also add to how you might feel that sense of failure sometimes. One thing that helped me that was very profound was like, because I remember when I went for therapy, for a few sessions, and then I was asking the therapist, I said, how I felt as a mom. And she's like, Do you have other mom friends that you look at and how they are raising their kids? Like, how's it going when they raise their kids and the kids are a bit older? You know, and I said, wow, it's like this mom's amazing, you know, like how she tries to connect with this kid. She really bothers to have these conversations or so, and the kids are amazing. You know, like kids they feel like they are very able to be themselves, yet are still pleasant, not like spoiled brats or whatnot. Kan?
Yeah.
And so when that happened. So the therapist, when she said, so if that is what is working for your friend and you're able to see the end result of that and you're doing kind of the similar thing, why would it not work for you? Right? Like, why are you so worried about failing when it could actually succeed? It could go well.
Yeah.
And that really changed my perspective on it. Because I was like, betul juga lah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not there yet. My cake is still baking in the oven. But I have seen the end result of what something like that can look like, you know, and that's worth it, I feel. Like when I see the quality of the bond that this mom has with her kids, I'm like, I want that, you know. Like, I think that's more important than being the perfect idea or having the idea of being like a perfect parent.
Yeah, that's actually really insightful. Yeah, I feel like it's the same concept lah. Macam you look at people macam with their careers, like or other people's businesses, like success stories, right? And so in your case, it's like a parenting success story.
Yeah.
And then you've seen the end result and you're like, okay, I want that, so I'm going to replicate it. And like right now, you're in the process, so obviously you're not going to see the results yet. So.
Yeah. And having said that, I guess to just kind of wrap up this bit, and also is where, Maya, don't compare yourself with like the ones that you feel are like, it's not very realistic, you know, because sometimes when we compare with certain people, everything that, yes, that is the benchmark of it, we end up feeling like worse about ourselves. You know, we have to be very careful about what you're filtering, who you're looking at, you know, and at this stage of life, sometimes, okay, maybe you don't get certain things completely right, you know, but it still boils down to how you care about connecting with your kids or so. I think that's the part which, you know, give yourself a little bit more credit for in that sense, kan?
Yeah, I agree. I would say like, you know, be kind to yourself. And I can see that you really care about your kids and you're trying your best, and that's enough.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like enough on some days, especially when you're very overwhelmed or so. But one step at a time, I think, definitely helps with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, that's what we have for today's episode. But next time we will talk a bit more about, we'll dive in a bit deeper into some other topics. But for now, we hope that this episode has helped everyone. You know, thank you again, Ilani, for being here.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, and do like, comment, and subscribe. Also, send us more of your letters so that we can discuss it a little bit more.
Yes.
Yeah.